Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube and KSL NewsRadio, your legacy home of the Cougars. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. Happy to have you on board onto this Friday edition of the show. Whether you're watching or listening, appreciate you for being on board. Big weekend ahead for BYU sports as the number 12 BYU football team gets set to take on TCU. And then BYU basketball prepares for a top 10 clash against number 3 UConn in Boston. But we start today's show off with an off-the-field story that's captured some headlines.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
BYU basketball newcomer, transfer from Southern Illinois, Canard Davis, was arrested on Thursday for an alleged DUI in Provo. Provo Police Department issued a press release due to multiple media inquiries, and they wrote the following. At approximately 11:45 a.m. on Thursday, November 13th, 2025, Provo police officers responded to a crash at the intersection of 900 West Center Street. During the accident investigation, officers found cause to place one of the drivers, Canard Davis, age 20, under arrest for suspected DUI. Davis was transported to the Provo police station for further investigation and was subsequently cited with DUI charges. He was released for medical treatment for minor injuries, and his vehicle was impounded. That again from the Provo Police Department. So where does this go from here for Canard Davis? Still no word officially from BYU if he made the trip or not to Boston because, again, BYU, with a two time zone game, they left on Thursday for Boston to prepare to take on the Huskies, and BYU had a shoot-around on Friday morning at the TD Garden to get ready for UConn tomorrow. Tip-off at 5 p.m. Pre-game begins at 4 on KSL NewsRadio, and the coverage will also be televised on Network Fox. In this situation, I think it's easy to rush to conclusions, and you're going to have many people online that are saying, this is BYU now. This is the new BYU. I look at it from this standpoint. Remember Chaz Ayu, former BYU football linebacker and safety. Chaz Ayu, back in 2020, on February 9th, 2020, was charged on suspicion of DUI, reckless driving, unsafe lane travel, speeding, and an open container. I went back and looked at that. It was resolved 1 month later, March 11th, and that the former Utah County Attorney General, David Leavitt at the time, he said on March 11th, 2020, there isn't any evidence to suggest those things occurred and everything dropped. BYU, in the case of Canard Davis right now, they issued a statement to the media that was pretty general. We are aware of the allegations and looking into the situation. That was similar commentary that they shared for Chaz Ayu back then 5 years ago. I bring up Chaz because to say there wasn't any evidence to just suggest those things occurred, I'm not saying that's the case here with Canard Davis because the limited info that we have is based on that press release. But I think we can't rush to decisions here, and I don't think BYU needs to make a knee-jerk decision and say Canard Davis is off the team. I know there's an honor code piece, which makes it a little tricky. And how does that get handled with BYU? I'd like to think, though, that BYU should probably get some praise, I think, when it comes to their handling of a recent honor code situation involving former BYU quarterback Jake Retzloff. I thought they handled that excellent, to be quite honest, how that was, in many respects, a difficult situation, but it ended up being, I think, a positive for everyone involved. So I think with this Canard Davis situation, I mean, me personally, if I was Kevin Young, I would keep him on the bench and keep him with the team. I don't know if I'd play him, but I'd keep him around the team. Keep in mind, Canard Davis did not play on Tuesday against Delaware due to Achilles tendon soreness. So he's been banged up and, use this as an opportunity to fully rest up potentially. But we don't know the timeline of when this gets resolved. Could this be a month like the Chaz Ayu situation? Could it be days? We'll see. But I just think that until more information comes out, I don't think there's a rush to say, hey, kick him off the team. I think let it play out. Let all the facts come in, and then make the decision if you're BYU, if you're Kevin Young, if you're the school, make a decision then when all the facts have been gathered, and then away you go from there. So that would be my thought, because I just think back to that Chaz Ayu situation, because that was a very knee-jerk reaction moment for many people, many fans. They just see the letters DUI and they let their mind wander. Let's let the facts get gathered here in this situation for Canard Davis, who, again, we don't know all the details here on that. It's very limited on what we have. So I'm of the belief, let everything be gathered. Let him be part of the team still. If he's sitting on that bench in Boston, I'm okay with it. Again, I don't know if he's with the team or not. I'm not making the trip to Boston. I'm going to be staying covering BYU football. But that would be my thought, because history in the past has shown where none of that occurred in the case of Chaz Ayu. And I'm not saying that's happening here, but just let the facts come out and then make all the decisions appropriately, and then away we go from there. So I'd keep him with the team. Let him practice still. Does he play in games? That's where I think is the biggest question. If this is an ongoing thing and it doesn't get any resolution in a very quick manner, does he play? That's where it becomes a situation where Kevin Young, BYU administrators, they have to make a decision there. But you keep him with the team, in my opinion, until all the facts are completely settled, and then you move forward with that. BYU basketball on the court does have a huge game on Saturday against the UConn Huskies, 5 p.m. tip-off against UConn. Cannot wait for this game. Key players to watch for UConn: Taurus Reed, 6'11", 265 pounds, a big man in the post for UConn. He's excellent. UConn is one of the best programs in college basketball in the 21st century, and they have been a juggernaut under Dan Hurley, who had some commentary when he was breaking down BYU film. When you watch, clips of BYU and AJ and Saunders, and they got one of the best point guards in the country. I mean, when you see that quality on film, I mean, you get scared straight. You get, things that worked the first 3 games won't work. But it's fun. We're excited to get a chance to go play in Boston this weekend versus, one of the best teams in the country. So it should be fun. Do you sense a hint of sarcasm there from Dan Hurley? Scared straight. Look, he's an East Coast guy. He's probably looking at this BYU team from the West and thinking, he can't be that good. Like, BYU's talent is impressive. That shows up on film. There's no doubt about that. That shows up. But I don't know. I looked at that quote and thought, he's being a little sarcastic, scared straight. Because BYU is walking into a buzzsaw potentially in Boston. I know this is a homecoming for AJ DeBonsa, who said he's excited to be back home in Boston. He posted that on X. But this will not be an environment that's pro AJ and pro BYU. Maybe there will be some BYU fans, and maybe there will be some AJ supporters, but this is going to be a pro UConn crowd. It's basically going to be a road game. What Villanova experienced in Vegas, BYU's probably going to experience in Boston. I'm curious to see how this BYU team responds. They're about a 3.5-point underdog in this game, which is, I think, a lot of respect for BYU. UConn hasn't played anyone yet of no. BYU's got to win over Villanova. One thing that stands out about UConn, though, a lot of continuity. 21st nationally in minutes continuity. You look at their starting 5. Reed, Alex Caravan, Solo Ball, Jalen Stewart. All 4 of those guys were on last year's UConn team and have been part of that program for some time. The only guy that's a new face in the starting 5, Silas DeMary, the guard transfer from Georgia, who BYU pursued a little bit in the transfer portal cycle. It's a really good team. I think in the post is going to be key for BYU. Kaba Keita, DeBonsa, Richie Saunders, they've got to clean up on the glass. They have got to limit second chance opportunities for UConn and dominate on the glass, because that was a point of emphasis against Delaware, in part because you know what's coming with UConn. Caravan 6'8", Solo ball is really good. I mean, this team can fill it up, UConn. This is going to be an excellent barometer. Even if BYU doesn't win this game, but maybe it's a one-possession game, within 5 points, I think you take that and say, you know what? Hey, hopefully we get a chance to rematch against those guys down the road. Obviously, if BYU wins this thing, we're talking about a team that should be in the top 3 of the rankings next week in the top 25 and making a case to be knocking on the door of number 1 because UConn's number 3 and you're basically going into a road environment, long travel. We'll see what happens, but I think BYU is going to hang. I think I would probably lean UConn slightly because of the road environment and BYU still figuring things out. And with the Canard Davis stuff, we did see a little bit of a drop-off for BYU initially against Delaware without Kennard Davis under the pretense of an injury, Achilles tendon soreness. So if you don't have him in this game, that makes things a bit challenging for the Cougars because he's one of their best defensive players. And if you don't possibly have him, again, we'll see what officially comes from BYU on Saturday. But I would probably lean a little bit UConn on this one. But I think BYU will be competitive. I think A.J. DeBonsa will shine. I would not be surprised if he puts on a spectacle, man, in his home environment and gets Boston fans saying, we want him on the Celtics. So it should be a heck of a game. Tip off again at 5 o'clock right here on KSL News Radio. Let's take a break. We went a little bit long here. We'll take a break. We'll get to BYU football against TCU next here on Cougar Tracks. It's powered by KSL Sports. Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube. Every day, Monday through Friday, we're coming to you here on Cougar Tracks with the latest in the world of BYU sports and BYU football. The number 12 Cougars are back in action, looking to right that wrong after last week's disappointing performance against Texas Tech. The challenge now in front of them is to take on TCU. TCU, solid team, average team in the Big 12. Not great. BYU should, I think, win this game, but it's going to be a challenge. Nothing's going to come easy. It's a different league in the Big 12. We all know that. Some numbers of note with TCU, 6-3. All 3 losses have come in the Big 12. Last week, they had a loss to Iowa State where they had a lot of miscues. All 3 of their games, they've had at least 3 turnovers the Horned Frogs have. So they've got to take care of the football for TCU. For BYU as well, they got to take care of the football too. Last week against Texas Tech, that was a mess. The muff punt, the missed opportunity for an INT from Evan Johnson, then Bear Bachmeier's pick, and then kind of a last-ditch throw it behind the line of scrimmage, trying to make a play, fumble, Jacob Rodriguez recovers. Safe to say, quick starts, turnover margin, huge areas of focus for both of these teams. And who can maybe get the upper hand in those respects can have a great chance to win this football game. TCU's interesting. Kavorian Barnes, the starting running back, out. You look at their ground attack, they've had a stuff rate where they've been behind the line of scrimmage on 24% of their carries. That's not good. TCU running the football, they're 122.8 yards per game on the ground, and they don't have their number 1 running back in Kavorian Barnes this week. The guys that they will likely turn to, Trent Battle and Jeremy Payne at running back. Payne is someone they've turned to a bit last week on 4th down against Iowa State. The Horned Frogs were 2 of 3 on 4th down conversions. So that's something to watch in a game that should be probably tight. Watch for someone like Jeremy Payne on 4th downs. And when I hear the name Jeremy and I think TCU, I think of Jeremy Curley. Remember 20 years ago, 2005, right at the goal line, 51-50. I still stand. It was a fumble. No replays back then to overturn something like that, but I digress. Another name to watch for on TCU is Eric McAllister. He's a big play receiver, 17.4 yards per catch. TCU's passing offense, 303.4 yards per game. That includes non-conference play. In the Big 12, they're 8th in scoring in the Big 12 at 28.2 points per game. BYU in the Big 12, 27.8. When you look deeper into the Big 12 stats, it's kind of interesting too. BYU, this was kind of a nugget that I thought was not great, but it doesn't shock me because of how it's played out to this point of the season in Big 12 games only. BYU is 15th in the league out of 16 in field goals made or field goal percentage this season. They're 7 of 11. TCU is 12th at 5 for 7. So a lot of attempts by BYU, but the percentage is not great, which is shocking because Big Game Bill, he's so good, but he's got to get right this week if called into duty against TCU. Earlier this week, with the conversation with the insider from TCU, he noted the defensive player Caleb Elarms, or he's been a beast. I mean, you're talking about a guy that can get 14, 15, 16 tackles. He's had to stretch these last 3 or 4 games where he has been all over the place, piling up tackles. So keep an eye out for him for BYU. Other players offensively for TCU at the wide receiver position, Joseph Manjack, a former Houston and USC transfer, 14.9 yards per catch. And then Jordan Dwyer, I believe he's an Idaho transfer, 13.1 yards per catch. They are big play receivers, so BYU secondary has to be on its A game once again. I thought they did really good against Tech. There was just some missed opportunities to get those big momentum-changing plays, and Baron Morton took some shots, it felt like, near that sideline down at the north end zone of the stadium where maybe some opportunities given up, but I trust BYU's passing defense will show up, and they've only given up 192.3 yards per game, so something's got to give. Josh Hoover can't just get away with this forever, where he's just tearing apart BYU. And you think about TCU, too. TCU, they are one of the programs that not only do they beat BYU, they hammer BYU. In this 5-game win streak that they've currently gone on against BYU, and I know most of the fans and most people probably watching this or listening don't remember those games in the Mountain West per se, but 2008, 2009, 2010, 2023, just hammered BYU. And I think that's what's kind of makes BYU fans a little leery of TCU, because BYU, by all accounts, they are always competitive against anyone they play against. I know the Texas Tech game was withstanding, but more times than not, BYU is going to be in it for 60 minutes. TCU, though, has this amazing ability, no matter who the coach, no matter who the personnel are, they just hammer BYU. 44-11 in 2023. That was one of the biggest beatdowns I've witnessed in the Kalani era. And Josh Hoover went off for 439. So this matchup always scares Cougar fans that have been around for a while. It just worries them a little bit. But again, that's ancient history, the Mountain West. But still, it kind of, for the people that live that and experience those games back in the heated Mountain West days, this matchup just makes you a little nervous because there are not many programs. Look, there's teams that have always beaten BYU or have a lot of success against BYU, but again, they don't crush BYU. 2009 with Max Hall, 38-7. College game days there, TCU just blows the doors off them. I think 2010 was 31-3. TCU was one of the best programs in college football that year. And then 2 years ago when TCU was a 5-7 team. You keep that in mind. I mean, 2 years ago, TCU was on equal footing with BYU, and they blew the doors off them. So TCU's got talent, too. That's the thing with them. They've lost a little bit of their aura. This is a total off-the-grid cut, but their jerseys, taking away the spikes on the collar, they don't have the same aura. They are wearing, I noticed, their Oreo helmets and jerseys, black helmet, white jersey, black pants. That's what they wore in the national title when they got beat 65-7. So maybe BYU can tap into Georgia and put a beat down and serve the favor back to TCU with a beatdown performance. Some other notes on stats. Second in the Big 12 in stopping the run is TCU during league play. They're only giving up 133.5 yards per game on the ground. So in league, they have been stout stopping the run, and nationally throughout the entire season, TCU is 35th. BYU, here's a crazy stat too, because you think great defense with BYU. BYU 13th in the league in stopping the run in Big 12 play, 175.2 yards per game. So without Kavorian Barnes, I'd like to think BYU's not going to give up that much on the ground. But can BYU exceed that 133 mark and get to 150 and up? Because BYU on the year is averaging an even 200. That's the space they want to live in. 175, 200, and up. They want to run the football. I think BYU's got the offensive line to create some opportunities for Bear Bachmeier to have success again running the football, particularly up the middle. But it will be no easy task because quietly TCU's been pretty good at stopping the run. I'll give you my score prediction next for BYU and TCU right here on Cougar Tracks. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports YouTube page. BYU versus TCU. Kickoff at 8:15 p.m. We will probably have pregame coverage beginning at 7:15. After basketball coverage concludes, it'll toss over to BYU football coverage here on KSL News Radio for the Cougs and the Horned Frogs. And you know the drill on Fridays before a big football game day. It's time for this.
Score prediction. Will BYU come out on top? It's time for Mitch's score prediction for the next game.
No vibe check this week. Gosh, that was so silly. Why did I do that, folks? I didn't focus on the data. I didn't focus on the analytics. I didn't focus on my models. I went kind of vibes and got caught up in the spectacle of everything that the stage was last week against Texas Tech, and I led you straight. I did. Not happening this week. But good news for you, Cougar fans. Cougs are going to get it done. I'm going with BYU to win this game, 27-21. I don't think either team reaches 30 points. I think BYU's defense will be pretty stout. I think they'll be much better defending the run this week because that has been an area where BYU has slipped, as we discussed, stopping the run in Big 12 play. Cougs have lost 5 in a row to TCU. That will end on Saturday night. I think BYU gets it done 27-21. I'm expecting a balanced attack from BYU. I know TCU's rush defense has been really strong in Big 12 play, second in the league. But I believe Bear Bachmeier gets back to playing at a high level with a lot of poise, with a lot of efficiency, because this TCU front is nowhere near as good as Texas Tech's. You're going from national champion potential good to just middle of the pack Big 12 team. And that's no slouch. TCU's got personnel, but that's a big, big gap. And you're at home. I like BYU to bounce back in this spot and really kind of return to its offensive identity of establishing the ground attack. LJ Martin's going to be huge in this game. He needs to be. And we talked about it yesterday about the amount of touches he gets. That's an area that I'm focusing on, and I think he gets a good lion's share of the carries for BYU and is also a pass catcher out of the backfield because what we've learned so far, there's no other option at running back besides LJ. Until Sione Moa comes through that door again and returns, and it was great to see Sione on the road with the team last week in Lubbock, but until he's back in action, there is no clear number 2 behind LJ Martin. The number 2 running back is Bear Bachmeier. Those are your 2 top ball carriers for BYU, and they've got to lead the day running the football, and I think Bear's going to have success passing the football too because TCU, their pass defense, they give up yards. 241.6 yards per game this season is TCU, and BYU's offense, Cody Hagan, is doubtful for this game per the availability report on Thursday night, which is unfortunate, but you do have the return of JoJo Phillips, so he steps back into the lineup again as he did last week. He needs to have a bounce-back performance. Chase Roberts got to catch everything thrown his way. Parker Kingston's got to bounce back too. That whole receiver unit needs a bounce back. The entire offense needs an entire bounce back because I'll tell you, if you lose this game, the wheels could come completely off on this season. You could be going from talking about the playoff to then suddenly you'd be fortunate if you could get to the Pop-Tarts Bowl as a best case scenario. Because on the road next week at Cincy will be no easy task if you're on a 2-game skid. It won't be easy coming off a win. So this is a important game, but I think BYU gets it done and gets that victory over the Horned Frogs that they have not experienced since 2007. That's 18 years ago. A kid that was born then is now an adult. That's how long it's been since BYU took down the Horned Frogs. They take care of business and improve to 9-1 on the season with 2 games remaining in this season. That's going to do it for this edition of Cougar Tracks. I hope all of you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a ton. And I will talk to you on Saturday with post-game reaction from BYU versus UConn, and then football reaction as well for the Cougs and the Horned Frogs right here on Cougar Tracks. It's powered by KSL Sports and KSL News Radio.